Good evening, everyone. Why don't we go ahead and call the Port Authority Board July 21st meeting to order. And if we could begin by standing and saying the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. Sal, if we could have the roll call, please.
Chairman Carl Roth.
Here.
Member Ron Padova.
Here.
Member Chris Leeds.
Here.
All right. We have the minutes from the last meeting. Do I have a motion to approve or any changes?
A motion to approve the minutes from last meeting.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right. Why don't we go to announcements or any things that are on your all's mind to get us started tonight? Chris?
Out on the water this weekend, the police boat was out on Friday and Saturday. It was really, really nice to see them out there, and you could just, regardless of what they were doing, they were just patrolling between, basically the end of the river right there at the mouth back in, and the boat traffic. People are signaling, hey, there's a police boat here and the law's here, and it was much more subdued, much more under control, so it's good to see.
Good deal. Yep. Ron?
I also saw Newport Richie was out too, and they spent more time in the river, which was nice, and they were telling people to slow down. So I noticed more because I was out in the afternoon, but in the morning it was nice and calm, and everybody was obeying the no wake zone.
Cool.
Yep.
No, that was very noticeable. I've had a couple other people come up and mention it to me. Certainly, my conscience was advising me that everything looked better from my wife. So that was all good. What I'd like to do is just take a couple minutes, and I did have a chance to get in front of council on Tuesday, so I wanted to give you guys a brief rundown. Basically, we went with three pieces in front of them. One was the timeline, one was the questionnaire, and one was the safety initiative. So the timeline they were very pleased with. They thought it made a lot of sense. Really no issues on that. March forward. I clarified to them that we were at a hold point until we got some clarification from them on a couple of things. So that was clear, but there were no additional things that they wanted us to do as part and parcel of that. Regarding the questionnaire, there was more discussion on that. Actually, they were trying to jump ahead to the questionnaire early on. I think the biggest thing that I heard was more questioning, more details around financial tolerance of the residents. So where we only had, I think, one question on there, maybe blow that out. So I was not necessarily planning on doing it tonight. We have a slot on the back end, but I thought we could get that on a future agenda or next agenda, get into more detail on that. Another thing that came up was as far as making sure that we didn't have, I'll just call it ballot stuffing going on. So if we had willy-nilly ballots going out or questionnaires, how do we rationalize that Chris Leeds fills one out, Ron Padova fills out, Carl Roth fills out one each? So that was there was a fairly extensive discussion on that. I think there's some potential ideas maybe around that. I'm going to ask Sal to say something here in a minute because we did have a conversation last week after I'd spoken with the city manager on some things that we might be able to do. And one of those, the other thing that the mayor brought up was the potential to use a professional organization to generate the survey. We talked about, certainly there's a cost associated with that, but that's something that we had a fair amount of discussion on. So I thought we would investigate what options are out there, refine the questionnaire, and then go back to council with what we think is a viable approach. So if I could interfere with Sal for a second, because Sal had a real good conversation with me last week, and I don't want to speak out of turn because he knows the facts of how we could potentially use the utility system to pinpoint the customers that we want to go after, and those that we don't, we can exclude. So we can do all of that sorting, do a particular mail, and on the back side, have a way to rationalize to make sure we get one from Ron Padova or his household, whatever criteria we establish. So with that, Sal, if you wouldn't mind taking a minute.
As I explained to Chairman Roth, the issues with the utility bill, we serve about 3,000 residents, and one of the things I wanted to try and narrow down is that and find out about is the targeting that we wanted to do. Did we want to target city residents? Did we want to target city residents on the waterfront? The issue with the water bills is that that's going to go out to all of our outside city residents as well. And we have an entire neighborhood, the Westport subdivision, that are all on canals. And I actually received a request of someone to come to tonight's meeting, already thinking that they would be involved, in the dredging process. So if we went ahead and issued a statement on the water bill itself, I can promise you that you're going to get a lot of feedback from people that are not even within the city, and it's going to corrupt any data that you're looking for. One of the recommendations I made to Chairman Roth was the billing computer is able to, we can create an Excel sheet. If we were to do the survey in-house, with council permission and the city manager's permission to do it in-house, there is a way to do that. We can segregate addresses, create a spreadsheet, and then be able to target those specific addresses and mail out something to those residents and receive the replies here. I've talked to the city manager about how to individualize the actual surveys themselves. Some of the comments were maybe stamping the city seal on the actual questionnaires. So even if someone tried to copy that, it would be a photocopy and we can just discard it. The city seal would be actually impressioned into the paper. So that's a way. And then we'll also, on the back end, as we receive the questionnaires and petitions, we can log those comments into our Excel sheet of who actually received them. So doing it in-house, there's ways to do it. Now, I've only explored the option of doing the utility bill or using the utility billing program to segregate addresses and send out a physical survey. As far as the doing it like through a Survey Monkey or something like that, that is an IT question, and of course, that's outside my parameter.
So that's what thanks, Sal, appreciate it. So that's what we know so far. So the thought was, this second item, let's get it on a topic, let's go a little bit further, let's peel back the onion a little bit more, and let's talk about how we could work it. So that's that. And today, I had the opportunity, on the third topic, which had to do with the safety initiative, I had the opportunity to meet with Chief Robinson and Captain Koch and discuss our concerns. So essentially, the things that we had talked about as far as the levels of enforcement that are out there, boat presence on the water, I basically stated it was very noticeable, the results that we saw this weekend, so kudos for that. However, we need to be consistent in that going forward. So the other thing was we talked about how are we going to potentially work together moving forward on this. Certainly the chief's only been here for a week now, effectively. So what he preferred to do is on the initial outreach to introduce himself to Chief Bocart down in Newport Richey, and also I think he knows Sheriff Nacco, but I don't think he's knocked on his door yet. So he wanted to do those initial outreach, see what resources they have, what their interest is, and I said, okay, that's good. Go ahead and do that. And then what we'll do in the initial is the signage component that we talked about, maybe getting consistent signage across the board. If we could have at a next meeting, let's come up with a little bit more detail around what we could potentially do. Maybe have a mock-up that perhaps we could go to the county and find out maybe some refinement, and then come back to council with, here's some ideas on this piece, was a thought. So I just wanted to, I'm only putting that out there as a thought for us. And then there may be some additional things we can do as well, but I didn't want to bump into the chief and his initial outreach, and we can work on that. And fundamentally, he mentioned that they really do have a need for the boat.
Right.
And because part of my question was to the chief, what do you guys need? Do you need resources? Do you need additional ordinances? What do you need? We can help, or we will help in that process if that's a need. So for example, the noise piece that we briefly chatted about, we talked about ordinance 14 this morning, and it's fairly extensive. They're going to go a little bit further on to make sure it's complete for their needs. So that's what I look at as a future conversation with the chief and Captain Koch as far as maybe what their additional needs are. So I thought the meeting went pretty well, personally, but there's certainly more next steps that we have to go through. So, right. Any?
No,
Chris,
the subject of the police boat came up during the council meeting, so there's a lot of conversation around
Yes.
that. The only question I would have would have been, is it going to be easier to refurbish and repower the boat they have?
Right.
Fiberglass hulls tend to
Right.
last forever, so.
Right.
It just, following the boat, it's obvious it needs some work. So.
Fair. Ron?
Now, when you talked about the other departments, was FWC involved? Was he going to talk to, or was someone going to reach out to them?
He didn't have that in the short term. FWC and Coasties were open. And depending on our next meeting, what we are comfortable with, we can decide where to go on that. I certainly have had contacts with those folks in the past for things more on a personal basis than through the board. But those are things that are out there. The other thing that we could do along this is we had talked about outreach to some of the commercial operators.
Right.
Maybe what we could do for next meeting is come up with a list of who those operators are. So for example, we know that the Freedom Boat Club is a new entity working out of Rum River. I couldn't think of the name of the charter operation that's on the east side marina there by Shark Bites. They run some charters out of there, bareboat.
Yeah.
I just don't know that. So the thought was maybe we can get a more complete list. We can start culminating there to bring that forward and maybe do that letter. I think Ronnie, you had talked about some time ago. So
To the shrimpers and
Yeah.
that letter?
yes,
Yes.
any of the commercial operators, Sun Cruise,
Right.
everybody.
Mm-hmm.
So
But the boat rental and the boat club folks would be good to get some
Yes.
education. Hey, when you're doing your initial walkthrough, boating safety and where everything is on the boat, also how to behave in the river.
exactly.
Would be great. Yep.
Exactly. So, okay, if there's nothing else here, I just wanted to open it up to the audience. Are there any topics that anyone would like us to consider tonight specifically, or at least be aware of, just to get started? Just open it up before we get into our regular agenda. No? Sure. Okay, please.
Alan Rose, 10221 Hilltop Drive. Not a city resident, but I active in waterways. And what I can bring to you guys is some information that may help with your process and moving forward with everything you're trying to do. Right now, I know that one of the big issues is always is funding. And the big thing is that a lot of people in this whole county are unaware of, for our waterways, there's over $2 billion every year, year in and year out in the Gulf of Mexico, available for people doing dredging projects, for people working on the waterways, improving the quality, water quality, improving the usable waters for our residents. And it really works. You just have to go out there and compete for it. And there's a lot out there to compete for it. You can get your piece. Just make sure you have a good presentation and go there, whether it's NOAA, whether it's Fish and Wildlife, whether it's Department of Interior. There's a ton of it out there, and it's specifically for waterways. Not you hear about all these, everybody getting inland money, grant money. This is waterways grant money, and it's available. The company you're having tonight do a presentation, fantastic. They're working up in Crystal River. I've watched what they do. there's a big gap in the Coastal Barrier Resource Act between Anklote and Crystal River. There's a big gap there, and no one's ever pursued it or tried to make it connected to do something for our coast. And there's a lot of needs there, but again, this is the city, so what we can do here, again, there's more funding and more ways to attach these types of issues that are out there, and the government will help you. They're very friendly. And so I'm making this short because I know you've got that good presentation. The other thing is, when we get down into Miller's Bayou, a big thing to remember in Miller's Bayou, because of all the sedimentation over the years, it's been over 30 years since our waterways have really had any serious attention. If it's dredged properly, right now you have a directional current, and it goes in, it goes out. And if it's dredged properly, you'll have all the waterways flowing properly, and you'll develop a nice radial current, soft radial current, that will give you a clear, clean flow every tide. So that way you're continuously refreshing the waterways, and then you'll reinvigorate everything. And that's going to be what he's going to show you tonight. This is how it works. He may not know about the radial current. I do, because I live in the area. Hudson's a directional current, and they need a radial. They're a radial current, and they need a directional. And what they're proposing up there will fix that problem. In Miller's Bayou, we have a directional current, and we need a radial current, just the opposite. But it will help tremendously on your water quality and your drainage during storms and what have you. And the last thing I'll bring up is your waterways, police and whatnot. Shoot boat down there, I like it. But I've been co-located with many different port authorities, whether it's New York City, whether it's Houston, Texas, or Tampa, Florida. And whenever I've worked with them, they are key to making things work on the waterways right. And it's something to see what they can do. Once they see the partners they can work with, and they can access different grant monies that are out there, because you become aware of it. And their port authorities are like an institution. They're authorized to do things. And if you can get that kind of authority, you can do that. You should see the beautiful boats that Hillsborough County sheriffs have that were purchased with federal money. And then the other thing you have is your Coast Guard auxiliary. You have a
About 10 seconds.
okay, flotilla in Gulf Harbors, and you have a flotilla in Yankeetown. Those guys are great. They're the volunteer portion of the Coast Guard. They'll help you out. You just have to call up and see if they're available. That's it.
Thank you, Alan.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Anyone else? All right, so what I'd like to do is introduce Mr. Howard Miller. He's with Sea and Shoreline Aquatic Restoration. I came across Howard through Commissioner Mariano, and they are doing some things that bring another perspective to just the dredging component. So I thought, as part of our educational exercise for those of us on the board, we would take advantage of Howard's expertise and his ability to and willingness to share some insights with us. So with that lead in, I'll turn it over to Howard.
Carl, thank you very much. We appreciate the invitation to come up to your city and explain to you what our company is all about, what we can do, what we have done, and see if we can team with you and your neighbors and neighboring cities, your county, everybody that's involved with the waterway. Alan, some of the problems and some of the solutions and how to come up with these solutions and so forth. What I'd like to do in this meeting tonight is tell you about our company, what we have done, who we are, how we've got to where we're at, and some of the projects that we've done. Projects have stemmed throughout the state of Florida, though we've done some outside, but mostly in the state of Florida, for some clean water, for a self-sustaining project where we can do, I know some of your hot ticket items are the dredging and your water clarity and flows and so forth like that. So we've put together programs that literally go from, and you'll hear me say this several times, from an A to Z, to where instead of a company coming in and just doing the dredging, which we dredge, we do all the different assets of, or assets of the project. But instead of just coming in and just doing the dredging and thanking you very much and walking down the street, what we want to do is we want to build your waterway to where it is self-sustaining, brought back sea life back into it, to where the water clarity lasts for years, so that our kids, grandkids down into the future can see what it used to look like when you guys were kids, and before then. By doing an A to Z program like that, we have succeeded in our project. One of the main things is we don't want to take out one portion of a project and think we have figured it all out and it work. And then there we are 10 years down the road, back to the drawing board and doing what we do. So a few years back in 2015, and maybe early 2015 to 14, a group of private citizens came to myself and some other guys to show us the problem that they had in Crystal River. And the problem they had in Crystal River was pretty much that beautiful waterway in there has died. And when it dies like that, it magnitudes so fast and goes south so fast with different type of algae, your water flow, you lose your sea life, you lose your fish life, snails, everything is gone, and it's basically like dead waterway. So we went up there and we looked at it real close. We have a group of guys that are very sharp. Carter Henney, which is the owner and president of the company, he has years of marine science behind him. He is a key player. There was some engineers that were very involved in understanding different water flows and different ways to fix these different problems. So we went up there, we took a look at the problem. A lot of that problem up there was a blue-green algae. And the blue-green algae came in for different reasons, and I have a little film, you'll see some of that, why it happened. But it came in and it decimated the area. It came in and died, it laid down on the bottom, it killed all the seagrass. The manatees had nothing to eat. They had to swim offshore to get their food. They were having health problems. And not just the manatees. This isn't all about the manatees, but it's for all the different species that we deal with. So we developed this program, and it's worked. And we're in our 5th year now. We have done approximately, let me think. We're probably in the 42 to 45 acres that we have done. We're going to do about 88 up to maybe 90 acres of area that's up there. We started 1 year in a pilot project, and we started with the entire program. Now, what we do is we go out there and we find out water flow, we find out water temperatures, we take analysis of the bottom. Is it sandy? Is it rocky? Is it shelly? Is it, every single piece of information that we can possibly come up with the thing. Then we design a program of what we've got to do. So basically what we do now is we go up there and we clean the bottom, just like you would a sod farm, is we prep the area to plant seagrass. So by doing that, a lot of times we have to do it by dredging. Now we do it with a hydraulic dredging system, and it's not really a dredging system as you would think about with a big machine coming in with a cutter head chopping up stuff and so forth. Our guys actually come in with divers and hoses, and they vacuum the bottom of the basin or the canals or whatever it is. Some wide areas, we come in with larger machinery and we vacuum the bottom of that. Now we bring it down to the original bottom, to where we come into a sand base. We come into where it's nice and clean, and we get rid of all the detritus and all the organic material that has been laying there for years. There are spots that we have sucked out muck that would be 12 feet high. In some spots, it's only a foot or 2 feet. But so far, probably very close to 1 million cubic yards of material has come out of there. Now, what we do with that material is we process it. We take that material, which has a lot of good nutrients that are in it, and we take out the sands, we take out the shells and rocks and things that we can reuse somewhere else. And then what we're left with is an organic material that's extremely fertile. So we've made arrangements with different farmers, and we've taken it to their farmland, and we spread it out over their farmland, and they use it for their, whether they're growing, crops or, whatever they're doing, for cattle grazing and so forth. They really love it. It works out really well, and they kind of argue over who's going to get, the next truckloads. But so every portion of this whole project we do as a restoration. The water that we're using as a vehicle to suck all that material out, we have to take all the nutrients out of that. So we take out about in the 90% of the phosphorus out and about 50% of the nitrogen out of that water, yet alone all the other impurities. So there's impurity. When we now send the water back, we're sending water back that is anywhere from the 0 NTUs to 27 or so NTUs going back in, depending on the area that we're in. Now, that's nice because we're replacing back and we pump an enormous amount of water. We do about 2,000 gallons a minute of water that is flowing through this whole system. And the whole system has a DMMA, an area that's up on a large chunk of land, and in that area right there we do the purification. We do all the separation and we purify the water, and we have a massive engineering feat that goes on up in there. Now, when we're done with that and the area is nice and clean, we come in, we plant it. Now, we don't just go somewhere else out in the bay and grab some plants and bring it back in and put it in. We have a farm that we grow all this stuff. We have a nursery that just grows seagrass. Carter and some of his colleagues and guys that he works with comes up with the exact type of seagrass that need to go in. So for instance, in Crystal River, we use 2 different types of seagrass because a lot of it is very fresh water. The water temperature is always about 72 degrees, but on further out, it has a little bit of a salinity flush. So a storm may come and maybe push a little bit of salinity, so they developed a different type of seagrass that would handle that area in there. So there's an enormous amount of science and engineering and things that go on in this whole project. Once we plant the seagrass, we do it in certain areas, and once the seagrass is planted, we put cages over it to protect it. And the cages vary in different sizes with different water depths, with different channels, boat traffic, different types of things. So they're strategically placed so that it's safe for navigation, and then safe for other fishermen or other water activities that occur throughout the thing. So an enormous feasibility study is done to make sure that we're right on track and make sure that we have everything done correctly. Now, when we put these cages over it, the cages are to protect it from different elements. They're protected from boats or boat anchors. There's also protected from manatees, turtles, snails, all sorts of different things that can destroy the seagrass. But they're designed to have nature work with us on the project. So for instance, the cages are there and the seagrass starts growing through the tops of the cages. Well, the first thing that happens is the manatee like to come and graze on the top of the cages. Well, that's great. It tells our plants to grow more rhizomes, and the rhizomes grow out underneath the mud. So Carter worked with this for years to find out the exact system and how it would work best. So that's done on there for about a year. The cages then come off. And in the wintertime, they pretty much get grazed down to nubs. But this rhizomes are still growing under the mud line and under the sand and so forth. And next spring, when the grass starts to come back up, it's popping up all over the place. So really it takes about 3 years to become 100% self-sustainable. And we watch this process, we document it, we go down with scientists and they dive down there, they take information on how the grass is doing, if it's doing good or bad, or should we move a cage or whatever needs to be done. We go there and we watch what's going on and study this. So now we have about 5 years of great data of all the different issues that could happen. We've gone through some hurricanes, we've gone through high salinity levels, we've gone through storms, boat traffic, tourists with looking at the manatees, all these different kind of things. So we've incorporated all that in to make the project work successfully. Now, once the cages are gone and the grass is growing on its own, we don't leave yet. We still stay with the project. We go in there and we watch and we monitor everything that is going on. So about a year after that, we go in there and we have a maintenance program. So we go in there and we make sure the grass is going good. We video it. We clean the, if there's still cages, we clean the cages. If we have a spot that's damaged for one reason or another, we may replant it. Whatever the situation may be, we go on and we keep maintaining it just like you would your yard and at your house, and making sure that it is a successful project. So once that is done, the next years we start moving on down the line. We finish an area, some acreages that are done, and we start moving on down the line until we are completely done with the project. So we're still maintaining behind us, and we're still working forward in front of us. So we have in Crystal River right now probably another 2 to 3 years before we're completely done. Inside of all that, what we do is also try to get participation of the community behind this project. They're ecstatic that we're there. They, homeowners love it because in their backyard, it's gorgeous. Tourists that are coming from out of town love it because they show up and there's beautiful waterways they kayak in or swim in or go boating in, and it brings more tourists in. The fish life is out of this world. Our client has hired a third-party engineering firm that measures everything from day one. They go out, they test the water, they've measured how many fish are there, they see what different varieties of fish and snails are on, and they do their report. They take, quarterly, they go out and do whatever measurements they do, and then they supply the client with a report that says what's going well and what's going bad, or whatever's in the report is done. And so that's a third-party engineering firm, which we've gotten unbelievable reviews of what we've done, and that's exciting for us, to see a report, a third party coming out and say, yeah, we're doing a good job, and we're going to give you more funding to keep moving forward and so forth like that. So within the community, us getting involved with all the different kayak clubs, the tour boats, and I think one of the most important is the schools. So we have a program that was developed by a couple school teachers and so forth that are in the lower school. Marie Bronkowski and Mrs. Brown, they developed a program for us that we're involved. We go to the school and we donated aquariums, and then we brought in a bunch of sand, and the kids would put the sand in the aquariums. Fire department would come suck up some water from Kings Bay, bring it out there, they put it in the tubs, and the kids would put the seagrass in there, and they would grow this throughout the year. The little kids would draw pictures of it, and the older kids would maybe make a report on it and so forth. At the end of the year, we permit a little section of Kings Bay, and the 5th graders go down and they plant their seagrass. And by them doing that, it creates them to have a stake in the game. The kids learn what's going on, how to maintain their backyard, tell their dad, don't anchor over there because you're going to tear up my seagrass. They understand that you go to a Publix or a Winn-Dixie or a grocery store or something like that, ask a 10-year-old kid what limbia is, and they'll tell you what it is. And they'll tell you where they plant their seagrass. So those are the different types of things that we like to team with your community to get these projects going. And that's what makes it successful. It makes it successful because everybody's got a stake in the game. Everybody needs to participate. And fortunately enough, we have developed a nice program so that we want to teach different people throughout the state of Florida how to do this. So that being said, Homosassa has jumped on board and learned what we have done. And we're literally within 15 or 20 days of having all their permitting completed, and we're about ready to start working up over in Homosassa. Very, very similar program, but all of them are uniquely different. They have a little bit different water flow and water temperature and different kind of things. So we design a program just to them, just like your city. What we would do is come in and figure out exactly what you need. You've got some other issues. You've got stormwater drainage. That's a tough problem. You've got, some other shallow waters that are in bad shape. You have unlevel grounds out there where your canals and your channels are creating sumps and just catching more detritus material. You know, all these different kind of things are going to be different to your area, and we'll build that scope of work to figure out exactly what needs to be done so that we can go into a program like this and then be self-sustainable. So I got a couple little films, they're only a few minutes, and they kind of show a little bit of what I just talked about, and builds a little bit of excitement of what your community could be doing. I'm very excited about it. I mean, we're doing it all up and down the state of Florida, and it's not exactly like this, but a lot of them gested like this, you know, from what we've learned from different projects and so forth. So let's see if we can figure out how to turn that on. You'll do that. So you'll see some of that is it will repeat what I've said, and I hope you find it very interesting. A little bit of that light switch or something. You'll get it.
So Howard, as far as why Sal's getting that squared away.
Yeah.
So versus just doing dredging, which we've been thinking about for a while.
Right.
This really kind of brings up additional components to it to make it more sustaining over the longer term versus like what we see in Tampa Bay. They'll do a dredge to maintain the ship channel, and then they'll come back in a few years, they'll dredge again. What you're talking about here is something that you get her one and almost done because you brought it back to more of a natural
Right.
environment.
If you do a dredging project, if you have an engineer go out and design what needs to be dredged and its water depths and so forth, and it's complete, you're gonna hire a dredge company and they're gonna go and dredge it. That dredge company is going to have to mitigate some of the damage that they have done, because they're
Right.
gonna find seagrass, different kind of things, and then that has to be repaired. They usually call us.
Gotcha.
Because we have our own sources and everything like that to be able to do that type of stuff. This is a step beyond that.
Gotcha.
Okay? By being a step beyond that, what we are is a restoration company that actually does some dredging and we do oyster bed restorations, we do prop scarring restorations, we do coral reef restorations, we do enormous amount of different types of projects that are like that. But by doing a restoration project, it does a lot of things by creates more opportunity for funding for different avenues.
Right.
Okay.
Avenues that we can create some funding from. So right now, the team basically in Crystal River is private funding. They have a group that is that pretty much kind of started the whole thing, and they snowballed into a large group, and we get funding from DEP, so we get state. We also get some from Swift Mud, from different kind of avenues, that are all different kind of grants. They developed a group up there that does everything from PR to fundraisers to people who go out and actually try to get the money from Tallahassee. It's a large mechanism, but it works. So far up there, we have spent about almost $20 million throughout their project. We probably will spend enough. We'll do that again within the next few years.
Thank you.
Spectacular in its beauty. It was even more spectacular in the past when we had a solid bed of eelgrass throughout the entire bay. what's so exciting about this time is as this eelgrass comes back in and begins to proliferate, we're beginning to see the ecosystem that was, the ecosystem that gave this place the name Crystal River.
So what we're seeing now, a completely different world from just a few years ago. But to really understand where we're at, you've got to go back even further into the 80s, when a group came in and tried to get rid of an invasive species called hydrilla.
Hydrilla causes significant environmental and economic problems in Florida and elsewhere.
They killed off the plant, but made a big mistake by leaving it on the bottom of our waterways to decay and rot and really just get gross down there. Then, fast forward to 1993, the no-name storm hits. It causes even more devastation by pushing a ton of salt water into our springs, killing off all the plant life that's there, which then, of course, falls to the bottom, continues to decay, and layers of muck continue to build up, setting the perfect environment for another species to come in and flourish. This species, Lingbia.
Anybody who visited here in the past 10 years knows what Lingbia algae is. It's a nuisance, it's a threat, it just took over the bay and made it a mess.
Now, this continues to worsen and build on itself until 2015, when a group of concerned citizens bands together, forms Save Crystal River, and they start to implement their 3-step plan.
So stage 1, we have to remove the muck off the bottom of the canals. There's several feet of dead material that's smothering the bottom of these canals, and we have to vacuum that off with special equipment. And then stage 2, we replant the area with native eelgrasses, and we put them in these protective cages so that the roots can get really well established. And then we maintain those cages, which is stage 3. So for 1 year, we scrub those cages, we check on our plants, and then after a year, the plants are strong enough to survive without their protection, and we can take those cages away, and then when the manatees graze, it doesn't pull up the roots of the plants.
So far, we've actively restored over 20 acres of eelgrass meadows here in Crystal River. However, this project's created a halo effect, and so that the grasses are growing outside the original planted and protected areas. So the investment in the upland canals is creating downstream effects, and that's what's important. Once you overcome the tipping point, it's a snowball downhill.
We never could have imagined how quickly we would see this happening and the dramatic changes we would see just over a few short years, and we're really just scratching the surface. If you want to see more about what we are doing right here in Crystal River, visit our website, kingsbayrestorationproject.com.
So that is kind of the beginning.
Florida's coasts and waterways are at a cross.
Just 1 second, if I don't mind. You go ahead. Yeah, you go ahead and do it, I guess.
Roads.
The new report claims we're at a crossroads with the algae problem on Florida's coasts and waterways.
Our coasts and waterways are at a crossroads.
Our coasts and our waterways are said to be at a crossroads. Top scientists in Florida now want your ideas on how to fight the problem from growing.
When this project started, there was some skepticism whether it could really work or not. What I'm astonished by is that we're only 5 years in, and the results are spectacular. There is eelgrass everywhere. It's spreading all over Kings Bay. And wherever that eelgrass goes, the water is clearer. It stabilizes the sediment on the bottom of the bay. It makes it harder for the algae to appear. And we're starting to see Crystal River as it's supposed to be. We're really seeing a lot more manatees here in summer now, which impacts our tourism economy because now instead of just having a winter manatee season, we're really transitioning at this point into a year-round manatee season because there's enough food in the bay now to sustain a population of at least 100 manatees year-round.
When you look at the grass that's growing, the seagrass that's growing on the bottom there, the eelgrass, it's amazing to see how it's spreading through nature and through natural sources. It's really amazing to see this on this scale
and what the future of the next 8 or 10 years will hold for this area. When folks come to me about 6 or 7 years ago initially and started talking about money to clean up Columbia and replant the eelgrass, we did have some naysayers. We had people saying, well, this will never work. The proof's in the pudding here. You know, it has been successful, it's being successful, and that success should help drive more resources.
We're only seeing the small effects from what has been done so far. What we're hopeful about is that all of Kings Bay can be restored, and I think that that is a real possibility now if the state has the will to continue this project and reclaim one of the gems of Florida.
I go into the classrooms to talk to the children about why Save Crystal River is trying to clean up the river. So at Crystal River Primary, for the past this is the 4th year, Duke Energy has supplied eelgrass. So every student in the whole entire school gets to plant a little section of eelgrass in their classroom aquarium. They get to watch it from December until May, and then they go to Hunter Spring and plant it. So what an opportunity, because they get to plant it. So the group this year in 5th grade has been growing eelgrass for 4 years. So they know it, they see the difference, they know how clean it is.
The results are unbelievable. They're better than I ever would have hoped for. We have a guy called a limnologist that comes back. He's an independent, kind of an underwater biologist, and he does a study every year. It was like 75% improved, both in the number of species that have come back into the area, but also in the volume of individual creatures, all the way down from the microscopic bugs that live in the algae of the plant leaves on up the food chain all the way to ultimately to the manatees. And every year he does a report, every year it's better. And all you have to do is look out in the water to see that.
The blue crabs had almost been completely wiped out because they had no cover. Now the blue crabs are back, the mangrove snapper are back, all other varieties of bait fish are back in the river, and again, it's all because of the grass.
I go out in the water just about every day. I've seen major changes, so keep up the good work.
It's working! It's absolutely beautiful.
It's working!
Keep up the great work.
Through this project, I'm really excited that my daughters are going to grow up to see this beautifully restored ecosystem and a healthy habitat, and know that one small community can make a really big difference in the environment.
I think that we're onto something here, and I know we've got 3 or 4 or 5 more years to finish cleaning up that area. This to me feels like more of a model for the rest of the state, for the rest of the state, for the rest of the state.
For Florida's ocean and coast, this is an all-hands-on-deck moment.
So those are some pretty strong testimonials. You know, you had your senator in there, you had Congressman Webster, you had local fishermen, you had people who live right there on the canal that have been there throughout their whole life. It is such a fantastic program to be involved with and to be now still even moving forward with it, and now able to share it to the other communities like yours and others throughout the coast of Florida. Florida needs it really bad. Just doing a dredging job, or just coming in there and cleaning out what's out there right now is, there's so much better and so much, we've learned so much to where, you know, there's a right way to do it, this thing, and a wrong way of doing it. We don't want to come back out and do it again in 10 years. The amount of, someone asked me, who benefits from this? Does it, it's a great question. Who does benefit from this? Is it the guy who lives right there on the canal and he gets to see it? Yeah, he gets to benefit from it. Is it you know, the guy that you know, comes down from, you know, upstate somewhere and has a chance to go fishing with his grandson, can't get on a boat, but he can fish on a dock, or he can get on a boat, that guy benefits from it. But also what really benefits from it is our grandkids. The fish, the birds, the crabs, the sea life, all that benefits from it. And they can't make that difference, but we can make the difference. And we have the opportunity to do that. And so, you know, if anyone wants to come to Crystal River and look at the project up there, you've got my card and contact information. Be more than happy to personally take everybody or anybody who wants to go throughout the project to learn more about it so that you can spread it throughout your community. But thank you very much for this opportunity and some questions.
Can I get some questions? Ron, please.
Yes. Yeah, Howard, my question would be, Crystal River has freshwater springs that flow into the river.
Yes.
How does that relate to our situation where that majority of our water and the quality comes from runoff, either street runoff from the cities way up the river, neighborhoods drain into the river, City of Port Richey drains into the river. The county has a plan here to drain even more runoff from way up a few miles away, all through into Miller's Bayou. So my question is the difference between Crystal River and our problem is, I know when we get to rainy season, I've lived on the river for 22 years. In the wintertime, when it doesn't rain, I go up the river and I can see the bottom at 8-10 feet going in the river. It starts to rain, and off my dock, I can't see 2 feet in the water because we have the oils and the runoff coming from miles up the river where everything is draining in. So how are we going to address that problem so that we can clean the water and get seagrass to grow?
Yeah, that's a great question because you're not the only one that has that problem.
Right.
Crystal River had a portion of that problem too. You know, they have street runoff, 19 runs right through their town and it's close to their city. You know, they have other neighborhoods that are up the hill and everything flows to the water. Everything flows to the water. So some things are dealing with the stormwater runoffs. You know, one idea is that they put in retention ponds basically in front of before it goes into the water. And it has a filtering system in there with different types of vegetation and so forth. Another one is when it hits the water, and actually I've looked at y'all's stormwater drains and so forth like that, is a very simple one that works well is a catch basin. So right at the end where your pipe comes in, water basically flows out and is caught into a catch basin, and the catch basin will rise up and then it will overflow and so forth. In the bottom of that catch basin, you always pick up a lot of the solids. You know, you pick up some styrofoam cups to plastics to, you know, debris and branches and everything like that. Some of those things can also be lined with different types of material that pick up oils. So every community has its own little problems. Some of them are very equal and the same that we've learned from other places. So, you know, we put our engineers to work. We say, okay, well, this is where our bad problem is right here. How are we going to do it? We can figure it out. I promise you that, and we can do that. Now, that seagrass that you saw in there, you saw some of the pictures of that seagrass and these little sparkles that were coming in the water right there. Believe it or not, that's oxygen. So that seagrass creates an oxygen and is a filter system in itself. So it's going to catch a lot of the organics and debris and organisms that are coming down from your street drain offs, and it's going to catch and filter that stuff. It was told to me that an acre of seagrass is carbon footprint of 300 acres of the rainforest. So you can imagine how much filtering system that we can put in out there. May need some areas that have that oysters is a good idea. May need some different types of seagrass, you know, and stormwater catch basins and all different types of things like that.
All right. Okay.
Yeah.
Any other things, Ron?
Nope, it's good.
Okay. Chris?
No, he asked the question I had, but I was taken aback by I've snorkeled in my canal and kayaked all over Miller's Bayou, and even when it's clear, all you're looking down at is silt and muck.
Right.
There's no grass anywhere there. Right. And there used to be, and there should be.
And there used to be, and there should be, and there can be.
Right.
You know, that's the key. So literally, we've taken places out in 10, 12 feet of muck and gone to a sand bottom.
Howard, the canals, there were some pictures dredging up there around Crystal River and Kings Bay. How many of those lateral canals are natural fingers versus artificially created? Because most of our canals here in Port Richey proper are artificially created. There's some natural areas, but can you talk to that a touch?
So in the 20s and 30s, a lot of those canals were dug out there. And up there, there's a lot of lime rock and limestone and so forth. Some of those canals, believe it or not, are really deep. You know, they had to blast out and take it out all mechanically. There's no homes, obviously, in there, and they had to dig that. So we started the project in an area, which was our pilot project, that was man-made. Even when you man-make a canal, especially up there, and here too, you come across springs. You know, and so there's a main vent, like Three Sisters Spring, obviously, that's been there for who knows how long, you know, but you know, as they dug up in there, other springs were found. Now, with that being said, when we did our cleaning, we're over 300 vents that we have uncovered. Just this past week, we uncovered a vent that had to have been 8 or 10 feet long, probably about this wide, and just a little ways, you know, 20 or 30 feet from that, another vent that was big as a basketball.
That weren't open.
That were not open. And it's unclogging this stuff, and then that new water coming through, and it's flowing nice, you know, and the nutrients coming back into the water, and when it happens, our divers celebrate because they're in there cleaning, and all of a sudden they feel this big burst of cool water, you know, and then all this clean stuff comes through, and it's like, you know, it's really a pretty good feeling, you know, when you come across that. Those things will happen in your canal too. Granted, you're not known for a lot of springs, but you've got a lot of springs out there. You ask one of them local fishermen. I bet he'll know right where, you know, 2 or 3 of them are. And what happens around those springs is you get the snapper and other different crab. You know, it's usually a good fishing haven that's right there. Those things will happen in your area too. The seagrass going in there, cleaning the bottom, lets more light filter in through the water. It's a snowball effect of what happens.
So essentially, when that grass gets in, then, and from your perspective, conceptually, the waterways that we know today that are often barren or with oysters, shells, and that type of thing could conceptually be seagrass.
Yes. Yes. So you have areas that are more susceptible to the seagrass.
Sure.
You know, there's some rock area that, you know, some of the seagrass is, you know, is a little more difficult to grow, and you know, maybe a high current area and things like that. But we study those areas. One of the byproducts of what happens when we do this project is the seagrass. Manatees will come and they'll graze on, you know, let's say years later, and they're grazing on the seagrass, and it pulls the seagrass up, and they may eat some of it, but all of a sudden a patch of roots take off and go floating. So we have in Kings Bay now, you know, all the way across Kings Bay on Buzzard Island and then different kind of areas that are over there, we have seagrass that is cultivated and they're back in there. Now, when we start this project, you know, we actually go in there and divers will actually seed these plants and get them going and so forth. So they're gonna multiply 3 different ways. You know, one of them is naturally on their own. The other one is by us going in there and planting them and then seeding and feeding them and garden tending to them. And the other is that they'll recolonize on their own. They'll be ripped up by somebody's anchor or you know, turtles or manatees, and then it's going to recolonize somewhere else.
Great.
Yeah.
Okay. Anything else for Howard? Go ahead, Ronnie.
You're working with the county too, Pasco County? Okay.
Yes, sir.
Because I was just getting back to the runoff. I know we go from Port Richey to Newport Richey to Pasco County with the river. So the runoff would have to be all 3 entities working together to help clean up the river.
Yes. What I'm doing here today is telling you about my company and what we can do and have done.
Right.
You know, where it goes from here is how far you all take it. You know, the county knows about us real well, the state knows about us real well, and the feds know about us real well. They're all very excited about our projects throughout the state. I'm excited about you all because you're kind of on the early ones on the board right now. You've already designated, know that you have a problem with your dredging and your stormwater runoffs, it's on their forefront, you know. So now is a good time for a company like ours to come in there and help you through those processes and steer you in the right directions and make this a successful project also. It can be done. It's not a pie in the sky or anything like that. It is truly proven method that's going on.
The recent designation for this area of the coast for and I'm going to say it the wrong way, but the seagrass preservation area that we've recently been designated as, does that help us from a visibility and a funding or any of that type of thing in your estimation?
Yeah. So you have different waterways areas, you know, whether it's state-owned land or if it's federal or the city owns even portions of it, or even you might even have areas that are privately owned, underwater submerged land and so forth. So that's why we get everybody in the team together. That's why we write a blanket permit, takes care of all these different problems and so forth. There's some things that we already have permitted in your area, you know, that can be started, you know, fairly quickly. As they snowball, you know, other things will get permitted and move forward into other things that you have. You know, you're already, you know, quite a ways through just getting a dredging permit, you know, and trying to get your dredging project done, you know. So, you know, what we do is we team with everyone. We help you put the ducks in a row, you know, to help with everything that needs to be done.
Howard, if you take a look at one of your projects, Crystal River, for example, and you were to take a look at the funding bucket, how could you break out a percentage to say the seed from the local entity is about X% and the seed because of the interest and enthusiasm from outside of that is Y%? Could you share some?
Yeah, maybe a little bit. That's not the area that I work with.
Okay.
You know, so I'm slightly familiar with it, but probably just enough to get me into trouble.
Okay.
But the very beginning stage of it, 100% from local people.
Okay.
That was a group that was called Save Crystal River.
Okay.
That stepped up to the plate and said, I want my waterway looking nice. Let me tell you, the Limbia up there was bad.
Yeah.
You pull your boat lift up and it'd be hanging on your boat lift and it would stink to high heavens. Bugs, flies, you know, things like that. You would go in a small boat, a little 20-horse kicker or something like that, you know, your little canoe or flats boat, and you go up the canal and your motor would overheat because that stuff was so bad. You're not far from behind that. Granted, you have a different salinity level, but you still have a blue-green algae problem and you have a dead bottom. You know, so your problems are the same but different, but they can be addressed, you know, catered right to it. So all that needs to be addressed to find out exactly what happens. So at the very beginning, there was 100% private.
Okay.
And then they learned what we can do. And they would go to DEP and say, hey, this is going to cost us this much money. We need funding for this. Where do we go from there? And they said, well, if you do this, we'll get you this much. You know, and you know, all the way down the line, Swift Mud, you know, all the different people that can be involved with trying to raise the type of money. Believe it or not, in the very beginning, like Senator Simpson said, there were some naysayers. I don't know if this is going to work. This isn't a proven project or anything like that. We're going to have a real hard time funding you, you know. And it was a tough sell, and we had to show them that, you know, we can do it, and we know how to do it, and we've got the expertise. So quit testing, quit doing these trials, spending gobs of money on a trial and saying, oh, well, it worked, or maybe it didn't work, and then everybody picks up their fence stakes and takes off. You know, we took in our pilot project, I believe it was about $2.5 or $2.2 or $3 million, and did a project, and then there was another group, need not to say, that was another group that spent that same amount of money in a lot smaller area, probably about an acre area. We did the A to Z all the way through, was extremely successful. A quarter of the way through, there wasn't successful. They just left. They left and left the stakes in the water. We came and took the stakes out and finished up, you know, and actually a little bit that was on our dime. But that's what I'm saying. The testing doesn't need to be done anymore. We've done the testing, we've got the knowledge, we got the information, we've got the capability, we know how to get the permit. You know, we team with you all to get the funding correct. And then we start moving forward and we start cleaning up our state, not just your town. You know,
Right.
You'll see, you'll get so excited about this project you'll want to help in the neighbor's project, and you'll want to help throughout the state of Florida, and so forth. I know we're all real busy, but that's how exciting it is. And like I said, one of the best projects of the whole thing is, or a portion of the whole thing is the kids learning what's going on out there. It's fantastic. So there is a curriculum that has been designed for the state of Florida that school uses, and other schools can adopt that same curriculum to teach their kids what's going on out there. So.
All right. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Really appreciate you coming tonight to share about your knowledge and what's gone on around. And I think I personally have felt that I've learned a lot from here. So definitely
Sorry I was
thank
so
you.
winded, but thank you all very much.
Yeah.
And y'all know how to get in touch with me if you need some other questions answered and so forth.
Good deal.
Super helpful.
Okay.
Super helpful. Thank you.
Gents, it's a little past our time. We didn't have anything firm on the agenda.
Do we have anybody in the audience
That has any questions or input? No? Okay. Alan, you're going to have to speak up or come to the mic, please.
We've had a problem with our oysters up in their different parts of the waterways. They clogged up. But then there's also bivalve reefs, and we could use those oysters to see what's been created and alleviate one problem and give us another benefit, because the bivalve reefs, one oyster worth 40 gallons a day, an oyster cleans out. So you could do your seagrasses, maybe take advantage of all of our plugged up oyster reefs that we've got and put them where they can do some good.
So our company does, we re-nourish oyster beds. We, probably, if you're boaters, you know what prop scarring is, where it goes across shallow water and eats up the seagrass or whatever going on there, a lot of that. And we put in, and we repair those prop scars. We put them basically in the backs, or little seed and everything like that. We go in there, permit the area. As a matter of fact, in your area, we have an enormous amount of already permitted. And we put those bags down in there, and then we maintain it, monitor it, make sure it's growing, and then all of a sudden you got seagrass going in there and so forth. And those things are mitigation credits. So you're gonna do a dredge job, you have to mitigate on some of these different types of items.
Those count.
Yeah.
Right.
And so we do all that type of stuff.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Okay. So, gents, I was going to suggest if, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Dave Mueller, 5439 Blue Point Drive. What this really did, and thank you very much, Howard, for presenting. It opened my eyes to the fact that we're kind of focused on the wrong thing.
Right.
We're doing this little bitty piece here, and the reality is we probably need to focus on Miller's Bayou and all the impact flowing down the river, flowing out of the drain waterways, and try to improve that. That's going to improve the rest of it. Focusing on a little bit of dredge in front of Hooters coming across here is the exact wrong thing to be looking at. And we need the big picture. We need the county, because this is not just our little community, although it all rolls downhill into our lap.
Sure.
The reality is it's a partnership that we need to forge with the county, with the city of Newport Richey, per se, and ourselves to try to look at the broad scope here and how do we implement a process or a plan collectively to address what's coming down the pike that lands on my doorstep, on your doorstep, on your doorstep.
Right.
Ultimately, I get everybody's trash through my canal, right? And the point being is, there's ways to collectively address this. Alan has brought out many grant opportunities, funding opportunities, and that's the big thing. But I think and I believe that the county does have a meeting of trying to improve the waterways around here. We need to collectively have some representation there and try to move that ball forward. And I appreciate you guys taking the lead, and let me know if I can help. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
With that being said, we also work with the community on their septic tanks and different problems that leaching into that.
Gotcha.
So It's a big picture.
Pat Rogers, 4838 Sunset Boulevard. Now, I've lived on the river since 1965, when we all had sewers, both Newport Richey and Port Richey. In the late 80s, we got, or they had septic tanks. In the late 80s, we got sewers. And we had grass growing. And where I am, there's a huge sandbar in front of the house. And there was grass growing on that sandbar until Sun Cruise came. Now, what I'm hearing is that it's not a Miller's Bayou issue, it's an entire river issue.
Yeah.
And I know the Army Corps is in charge of the main channel.
Right.
But would this be working on the sides? Because like in front of my house, there's this huge sandbar. If you go out and walk in the river, the muck goes up past your ankles.
Yeah,
Right.
oh yeah.
Yeah.
And it smells.
On a project like what she's just mentioning there, the Army Corps has a small project that's considered to be considered a small project. They have $10 million grant buckets at a time. They may have 100 or 200 projects going on. And they consider it a small project, but they give up the $10 million and they'll oversee it if you can say it's connected to a waterway that they oversee.
Yeah, I think what we wanted to do was get a broader perspective than just the dredging, and I think Howard brought that this evening.
That's how I saw it.
Right, and one of the things that's nice about Crystal River, there's multiple components associated with that. We've got canals, we've got bayous, we've got river flows, we've got a number of things that go in associated with that. So we wanted to at least plant the seed, leverage the expertise, and maybe broaden our horizons and figure out how to move this forward. And I think we did a good thing tonight by doing that, so I'm glad everyone was able to participate. Good time.
You're right, you have to answer your question there, is yes, there is the muck. When we clean out a canal, we go from the seawall to the seawall. We go underneath people's docks, we have them move their boat, we do underneath their boat lift. We do every single thing, because we have to. We can't leave a corner like that that is infected or is gonna, go back out into. Libya doubles in size every 30 days. So it grows rampant into the rest. So we start up at the head of the canal, far up as we can, and clean those, everything, seawalls, docks, underneath, pilings, the bottom, we get to the natural bottom, and then we start doing our work.
Howard, one question from me. Could we get links to those videos?
Yes.
If Sal has them, would love to share those with the council.
Tomorrow, I'm gonna get in touch with him.
Okay,
We're gonna
thank
give
you.
him all that stuff.
Good.
And then also
You
some
can,
others.
thank you, Sal.
Good.
I'll get it on social media.
If there's no other issues tonight, I think I'd like to see if we could move on to the next session, but call tonight a night. And I guess the question for folks is, when would you like to get together again? As far as following up.
2 weeks?
2 weeks? Or are we going to have any information in 2 weeks?
Well,
Are we still at the standstill with the
We've got some work
council?
we need to do. However, in 2 weeks, I'm going to be out of pocket, so I'm kind of.
Okay, then 1 month?
Yeah, if that's okay,
That's
unless you
okay.
guys want to get together, then we'll schedule something.
No.
1 month works.
All right, so we'll plan our next meeting, we'll get an agenda for Sal, so the third week of August would be our next planned meeting.
Okay, so we're gonna shoot for the 18th then?
Yes.
Yes.
Be our third week.
Yes.
Okay.
So with that, do I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn?
I second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Everyone.